Hey everybody, this is a Poison Concoction League starter guide for 3.16 Scourge expansion. I've made a POB with a tree and some skills filled out and a basic item list at League start. Alright, let's start with going over skills for Poison Concoction. We have a Poison Concoction here. Right now it's Explosive Concoction since it's not in POB yet. The first link is Void Manipulation. Second link is Add Chaos. Third link is Greater Volley, which, at least mechanically wise, felt much better than GMP when I was testing it with Explosive Concoction, which should have similar mechanics to Poison Concoction. We also have Unbound Ailments, and then for the final link, we have Cruelty and optional Vicious Projectiles. Cruelty is stronger if you can keep up the full effect, but for bosses, if you can't keep up the full effect, I would switch out to Vicious Projectiles. As far as auras and curses here, we have Herald of Agony, Malevolence, Grace, and Despair as our curse. As far as movement goes, we have Flame Dash, Shield Charge, and faster attacks. This could be switched out to Fortify, but I'm not sure how Fortify will feel with the new changes. So that's also an option here you can switch out. For the links here, we have our totem setup for Wither, Spell Totem, Wither, Multi-Totems. This is just for bossing. Plague Bearer also here for clear. And for our buffs, we have Blood Rage for our Leech, Frenzy Charges while mapping, Precision to fix our accuracy, Mortal Call and cast when damage taken as our defensive setup. As far as League Start goes, you're going to level up Splitting Steel, Onslaught, and Chance to Bleed as the 3-link. That should carry you up to Act 2, where you can switch to Poison Concoction. Alright, let's go after the tree. So for this tree, I have a multiple tree setup from League Starter all the way up till level 94-ish. So as far as League Start goes, we go after projectile nodes because we're starting as Splitting Steel. This will give us more DPS for that. Some life nodes, and then you grab this first poison node. So around like 25-ish or so, in Act 2, once you grab Herald Agony onto the build, once you get these two nodes, you should have a 95% chance of poison, and then at that point, you can switch over to Poison Concoction for the rest of the leveling process. We just grab life here, grabbing some suppression. Right here, around 30, just more life, more damage. And then at 60, we grab just more damage, more damage. Just grabbing damage and life right here. We grab this leech right here. And then just damage and life. Nothing too special. And then once we get near the end of the axe, we'll start grabbing some suppression for some defense right here. You don't really need suppression early on, but near the end of maps is when we start grabbing it. And then when we get to the very end, this is the entire tree. Everything's pretty self-explanatory. We have this claw node here. If you're wondering why we're getting this, it's because we want this very strong mastery here. Enemies cannot deal crits when you poison them, which is always basically, so you don't take crits. That's why we're grabbing this node. It gives us chance to poison. And it also gives dot multi. So it's not terrible even though we're not using claws. At League Start, in the guide you'll see that's a little bit different. This is actually life gain on hit, which is very strong. 5 and 10. At the beginning of the Act 2 you can get this. But when you get to the end game, you don't need that mana on hit anymore. You switch this to the cannot deal crits. Okay, and then we have just life. The blind here is for some defense. Plus, blind actually lowers the enemy evasion, so it actually gives us some accuracy. That's why I have this in the build. Everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Just life, suppression, and damage. Nothing too special about the tree. We took this mana node right here, or mana reservation node for the auras. That's mostly so it can fit in the grace. And this one needs to be switched out at the very end when you can fit it in as grace reservation. So that should be good. Just life. Nothing too special, like I said. We have cruelty effect here. Like I said, if you can keep up 100% cruelty against like big bosses, that means it's a good 6th link. Last link, sorry about that. But if you can't keep 100% cruelty effect, I would switch to vicious projectiles. This is just life. As far as defenses here, we have a Ghost Dancer. Ghost Dance is good for us because we have high evasion. Every time we get hit for the first 3 hits, we gain 3% of our ES as evasion. So with the amount of evasion we have, which is 15,000 to 20,000, about that much, we should be getting like about 600 to 500 ES per hit. So that's an extra 1,500 health, basically. Let's go after the items. So since we're talking about Ghost Dance, the reason why we have ES is because of the Gravicious Unveil. This gives us 10% of our life, which we have around 6,000 as ES. That should be enough to take full advantage of the Ghost Dance. The rest of the gear is just very basic, all evasion bases, just life. Nothing too special. As far as helmet, there is a mod you want to go after. It's increased duration of ailments you inflict while focused. This will make your poisons last a long time, which is good for ramping damage against bosses. But if you're just clearing, it shouldn't matter too much. We have the Apothecary gloves. Everything else is just basic evasion gear. Nothing too special. We're using a Stygian, and we put a Searching Eye into there just to fix my accuracy, which should help a bit. We have just Vermilion rings. You might need to use these Elrion minus mana cost rings until you can get enough mana and regen and leech. So you probably do need 1-2 of those. We also are using an agate base amulet. This is pretty important because we're probably going to be lacking strength and intelligence. This will help meet the requirements. As far as flask goes, this is the best flask for poison concoction. It's a saturated divine flask. The suffix doesn't really matter. You can choose whatever you want. I chose bleeding immunity. We have a standard Quicksilver. We have a Jade and Granite flask for defense. I also have a Sapphire flask right here, Taste of Hate, which is extremely strong. Probably gives around 20-ish% of Fizz taken as cold, which should be really helpful against Fizz damage, right? If you don't have Taste of Hate, just put in a Onslaught flask there. Jewels. These should give us a ton of damage in the end game, but right now we just have a 2-prop one, just life, plus any chaos damage or damage over time, poison, anything works. Basically, you just get life at the beginning. You can make them much better later on. And then that's as far as the tree goes. Nothing's too special. Just get life, fill out your resist, and look for chaos damage to tax if you can for the rings and amulet. You can craft that on if you have a free slot. Fix your resist. We're using Vermilion rings for extra health, but just use resist rings in the beginning. Nothing too special. Going back to the tree, let's go after the Ascendancy points. First point, I would go Nature's Boon, just for flasks recharge when you're doing the campaign. Just fills your Quicksilver up all the time so you can go faster. After that, you go for Master Toxicity. This is good for clear and just more damage. After that, Nature's Reprisal, more damage. And then finally, Nature's Adrenaline, just for attack speed and movement. And that's pretty much it for the guide. It's not too much more to it. As far as expectations, this build should be able to clear up to T14s pretty safely, and should be pretty comfy because you have the Poison Prolift that takes care of the clear. And yeah, also have Plague Bear, which helps with the clear also, right? Your damage as far as single target will be decent. We're looking for around 600k right here at the 94. This is Sears damage without nothing like POB ticked off. We don't have Wither stacks here. We just have just blinded, which is pretty reasonable, I would say. And then if you want to add a wither, which you put down the totems for bosses, let's go with half the max stack. You do around 800k, probably around 1 million with Plague Bearer going. So not too bad. 1 million Sears DPS should be enough for doing the Guardians, Elder, Shaper, just the basic bosses. I would not do Invitations until you get a lot more damage. Invitations, since our damage is only about 1 million or so, if you try to fight the Guardians, you'll probably end up fighting all 4 at the same time. The damage is doable if you're used to the fight, but wouldn't be comfy, I would say. Wait until you get better gear, maybe around 2 million damage or something like that, and it'd be much more comfortable. As far as like map bosses, they might take a little bit to kill because you have to ramp up the totems and ramp up the Plague Bearer, but should be a pretty easy clear, I would say, up to red maps. Like I said, you can do the Guardians. It'll be a little slow when you kill the Guardians and Elder, but as long as you understand the fight, it should be enough damage. And this build, I think, can scale quite high because of all the damage over time multi that they added to the gear, right? So these rings can get damage over time here, and the amulet can get damage over time. As far as future endgame upgrades, we'll have to see with the gem. We don't really know right now. The biggest upgrade you can get from my basic starter tree is a cluster jewel setup. I added this to the build. This will, as you can see, almost add, 40% more damage, basically, with the cluster jewel setup. This is definitely what you want. It's just too efficient for points. Also, as far as skills go, I think this skill should scale with plus gem levels, but we'll have to see. Because Explosive Concoction, as far as I understand it scales very well with gem levels. So if Poison Concoction works the same way, you would get +2 here. You probably use the Empower gem. And you probably also use the Awaken gems that give +1 gem level to the main skill. But as I said, we'll have to see. Anyways, if you have any other questions, you can message me in Discord or in the Twitch channel. Thanks for watching my guide, and good luck in Scourge. Bye, everybody.